Hey, it's John. Welcome back to the show, and welcome back to the latest edition of the Album War. The premise of this series is to talk about two or more albums or artists who released an album with the same title, or perhaps a similar title, regardless of era, regardless of genre. I will talk about these albums. I'll talk about what I like about them, what I may not be so crazy about with them, and then I'll determine the winner of the Album War. Today's album, Headhunter or Headhunters. As the late, great Ed Daring would say, let's meet the principals. First album I'm going to discuss today was a classic in the jazz fusion genre or the jazz genre in general. This is Herbie Hancock with his 12th album released on October 13, 1973 on Columbia Records, Headhunters. This was produced by David Rubinson and Herbie Hancock. This would be the first platinum album in the jazz genre, arguably Herbie Hancock's most successful release. And he has over 40 albums, studio albums. This would hit number 13 on the Billboard Top 200. It would hit the number 2 spot on the Billboard R&B album charts. The second album we'll talk about is a totally different animal. This would also be this band's most successful album. This is Krokus with their album from April 26, 1983 on Arista Records, Headhunter. This would be the band's 7th studio album and would be their first of 2 gold albums in the United States. The other gold album would be their following album, The Blitz. This would go to number 25 in the United States. It would go to number 22 in Sweden, number 31 in Canada, number 35 in New Zealand. This was produced by Tom Allom. This has perhaps their most famous song on it, and Screaming in the Nights. So these albums are in my DNA. I've owned this album for 25 years. By 2000, I was getting heavy into jazz music. I was picking up a lot of jazz music for WRTI, Temple University Radio out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. They played a lot of fusion there at night. So this was one of my first jazz fusion albums, if not my first. I have to go back and look. But I bought this through BMG Music Service in 2001. I originally bought this through BMG Music Service in 1984. Krokus's Headhunter. This was one of my 6 for a penny. I had the cassette with the red cover. And this here is a Japanese import that I would later pick up at Joe Nardone's Gallery of Sound in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. More music for your money. So these albums I have a lot of experience with. So I just wanted to say that from the get-go. And one more thing I'd like to say before I review these albums. I'd like to dedicate this to Martin Popoff and In My House 11. For more information, check out the Platinum Review series on the Contrarians, where Martin reviews Herbie Hancock's Headhunters. Let's get started. So, this is where Herbie got more accessible with his music. Like Miles Davis, who he was in Miles Davis's second great quintet, Miles was getting more adventurous with his music. We would call it fusion. And Herbie was doing the same thing. The difference was when Miles was getting more accessible, it had this adventurous feel, but the younger generation was getting onto it. The younger generation loved Bitches Brew and then a few of the albums after that. That's when they were really getting in. When Herbie went more adventurous with the Mondwishy recordings in particular, the albums Mondwishy, Crossings, and Sextant, respectively, they weren't gaining the same kind of returns. So what Herbie decided to do was, add some of that adventurousness, but make his music more accessible, go into funk. We have one musician that was still with Herbie before this album was made, and then we have a whole different band, new band after that. Musicians who played on Headhunters are Herbie Hancock, Fender Rhodes electric piano, Owner D6 clavinet, ARP Odyssey synthesizer, ARP soloist synthesizer, and pipes. Benny Maupin, who was with Herbie before this album, on soprano and tenor saxophone, saxello, bass clarinet, and alto flute. We got Paul Jackson on electric bass and marimba. We have Harvey Mason on Yamaha drums. We have Bill Summers on a variety of percussion as follows: congas, shakir, balafori, agogo, kabasa, hinwo, tambourine, log drum, surdo, gankokui, and beer bottle. Beer bottles I'll get into in a little bit, and not for drinking. So, 4 tracks, instrumental jazz album here, 41 minutes, 47 seconds. So while he was making his albums more accessible, we still have very long song lengths on here. Let's get into the tracks. The first one is a 15-minute, 41-second monster called Chameleon, which is based on 2 hooks. The bass hook, which is actually played by Herbie synthesizer, and the saxophone lines that work as hooks by Benny Maupin. The song, for all of the adventurousness that is going on, it always goes back to that main bass hook. But the sax lines are very, very memorable. So we're working off this, and this is a very danceable song most of the time. You can hear that, you can tell that this was why this was a big hit in the dance clubs back in the day. So we're working off of that hook. The first few minutes, it's that sax line that's really bringing you in as well. And it's a very memorable one. And the end of the sax line is usually what stops that theme and goes into another theme. So we have that going on. And then by about the 3 or 4 minute mark, we got Herbie's futuristic, we would call, keyboard sounds here. Although they weren't really futuristic at the time, because you have a clavinet there going on the whole time. You had plenty of this going on Billy Preston's work, particularly his song Out of Space. Or you can listen to Stevie Wonder's album at the time. He really loved using the clavinet on those albums. I mean, listen to a song like Higher Ground, for example. So perhaps the sounds are, they're very, very spacey. Maybe they sound futuristic, but I mean, I think it was part of the aesthetic in 73. Maybe not a large part, but certainly a part. So we have that going on, and that's what's really carrying you. And some of these sounds that he's getting out of his keyboards are pretty mind-blowing. Really, really cool. And while we're working off of this groove. And then once that part of the song ends, then you got Harvey's drums kicking in again. And then you got Paul's bass solo coming around 7:43. And it's a very busy, funky line. And Harvey and him are working up a groove. They're working up a sweat. It sounds great for about a minute. They have that going on. And then after that, here comes Herbie's spacey keyboards again. And meanwhile, the rhythm, the bass is playing a different line here. It's being more in the background. But Harvey's really working his ass off. Harvey's drumming on here is fantastic. You need a lot of dexterity, musicality, and stamina to do what Harvey's doing on here. So it's those spacey keyboards that are keeping you in, and as it goes on, it's just getting a little more kinetic, a little more frantic as it goes on. And there are times that you think it's going to end, but it just keeps building and building. We got these nice stop-start rhythms going on. Finally, when that theme ends, maybe 13 minutes in, you're thinking maybe the song's going to end, but we go back into the main bass line again. And that goes into the conclusion of the song. At the end, we got these wonderful horn lines from Benny that are taking into the fade out. It's really, really cool. They edited this song to get on AM radio, which was the primary format back in 1973. And they edited it down to less than 3 minutes. You could check it out on Spotify, or you could check it out on YouTube, or on the Ken Burns Jazz Collection. They made individual CDs for jazz heroes, and one of them's on Herbie. It's on that. And man, what a butcher job that single was. But it got him on AM radio. So, and was an introduction for many, many people to Herbie's music. But you really have to hear this version in order to truly understand the greatness of this track. The next track is Watermelon Man. Watermelon Man is Herbie copying or doing a cover of his own song, which was originally on his first album as a leader, which was taken off. This is from Blue Note Records, and this was released in 1962. This is more in the hard bop vein of the early to mid 60s. Herbie would go deeper into this vein on albums like Maiden Voyage, Empyrean Isles, The Prisoner, Speak Like a Child. Wonderful albums, as well as albums as part of Miles Davis's second great quintet. Albums like ESP, Miles Smiles, Nefertiti, Sorcerer. Here you have Freddie Hubbard on trumpet and Derek Gordon on tenor sax, respectively. They put in marvelous solos on here. But the focus on this song is the rollicking piano line provided by Herbie Hancock. It's a very cool version. And then later on, in about a year or two, Mongo Santa Maria would do a cover of Watermelon Man, but he would add vocals to it. And that would hit number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts. And at a 2-minute version, and it's okay. You could tell it's definitely based off this, but I prefer the original. And then you get to this version 11 years later, which Herbie and the Headhunters turn inside out. Remember I was talking about beer bottles? Well, the beginning, that sound is Bill blowing in the beer bottles, and then you got a flute working off of those beer bottles. That's also Bill. And that's going on. That's one of many African elements that you have on here, African musical elements that you have on this album. This sounds more like African music in its presentation. It's a lot more subdued compared to Chameleon. This isn't really as danceable, not so much about the groove, although everyone's playing an integral part here. It's a lot more smooth jazz, what we would call smooth jazz at this point. Okay, we didn't have a name like that back in the 60s, well, before my time. So this is very, very accessible. It really brings you in. Wonderful, classy, expressive horn lines from Benny on this one. I think that's the best part of the song, but it's based on that main hook with Bill blown into the beer bottles. And you got nice clavinet going on here from Herbie. Paul's bass playing is a lot more subdued, like little notes here and there. He's just adding more color than anything else. And that beer bottle hook there is what ends the song. This is a 6-minute track. Then we go into Sly, which many of you would probably figure out this was a tribute or a shout out to Sly Stone from Sly and the Family Stone. If you hear that, that's an integral part of a lot of Sly's funkier stuff, particularly a song like Sing a Simple Song. It has a and this is so you hear that's very Sly-like in its beginning. And we go back to that part of the song over and over. That's providing the theme, the backbone of the song. But this is just a crazy, frantic, exciting, energetic workout for the most part. We do have some subdued parts here where you got these nice splashes of keyboard from Herbie and these very expressive sounds from Benny. But then they'll go into that and then it turns into chaos. They are really going crazy on this. Benny is laying on some great grooves on here on his sax. The clavinet's going crazy. You got this great piano work from Herbie on here. The rhythm section's going nuts. Harvey and Paul are going crazy on this. It is awesome, but it's bringing in. Some people might think it's noise, but if you really listen, there's a lot going on, and it's keeping you. If you're really into jazz, you're really, really being intrigued by what's going on here. I think it's too crazy to dance to. You'd have to be a contortionist to dance to it, right? So this is very, very cool. And at times it slows down and it gets more bright and sunny with Herbie's keyboard lines. At the end, it has this very space-like keyboard sound from Herbie on the synth to end the song. But it's taking you on a ride. So much ebb and flow on the song Sly. Vein Melter is the last track. 9 minutes. Would it be a ballad? I guess you could say it's a ballad. But it's interesting to call it a ballad if you have that militant drum beat from Harvey the whole time. You're working off that. There are some nice flute lines on here that are adding a lot of texture. The piano lines are very subdued, more synth than anything, but even with the synth, we're not going crazy. It's more about atmosphere. Long, drawn-out, expressive notes on this. Paul, again, is playing more for the song. A lot more color on here. This is not a funky song at all. This is very atmospheric. It's just something to really, really chill out to. But you'd think 9 minutes would be too long. It's not, because there's other things going on as you're listening to it. You're picking up these little things. Some of these synth sounds that Herbie's throwing in are very, very imaginative and creative. Very, very cool. Wonderful way to end this album, which at first you may find a little off-putting. I mean, there's some songs, parts of songs you may find very, oh, I like this part of the song, but what are they doing here? But as you continue to listen to it, it's a very, very cohesive, accessible, wonderful musical album here from Herbie Hancock with Headhunters. Now let's go into Krokus with Headhunter. To me, Krokus were never better than here. Let's go over who played on the album. We have Chris Von Rohr on bass and percussion, Fernando von Arb on lead guitar, Mark Starocki on vocals, Mark Kohler on rhythm guitar, Steve Pace on drums. There have been a lot of members who've gone through Krokus. Interestingly, 4 of these members are still in the band today. A couple have been in and out a few times. Steve Pace is the only musician not in the band. He only played on this album, and he does a tremendous job on the drums on this album. So, I owned this album almost 20 years before I owned Herbie Hancock's Headhunters. I've owned several Krokus albums throughout my life. To me, this is the album where Krokus put it all together. They should have stayed in this vein. I don't know if it was management. I'm thinking it might have been the record company. But here is where Krokus put it together. This is a classic hard rock / heavy metal album. Headhunter, the title track, opens it. It is a burner. It is wicked. The band is playing with a lot of confidence, a lot of passion, a lot of fire throughout. And most of the songs are top notch, starting with this title track, which is wicked. One thing that comes out to you, if you haven't listened to this album in a long time, wow, these lyrics were pretty risque for 1983. I mean, a little bit of that was going on, but wow, this is, yeah, I could see how some people may be offended by the lyrics, but I mean, I wasn't offended when I heard this at 13. Headhunter is a raging opener. Mark is on fire. We got a great chorus on here. The guitar lines on here are excellent. They really, really bring you in. They sound volcanic at times. It is wonderful. And Mark's vocals, he is using it. He could scream like few back in the day. And he's really playing that part up to the hilt here. Excellent opener. We go into Eat the Rich, which slows things down a little bit, a little more accessible. Eat the Rich, don't you know life is a bitch? Very memorable chorus. Dick this used to get played on Rock 107, WEZX FM, Scranton, Pennsylvania, the home of rock and roll. But I know the next song got played a lot more. You still hear it on there. Eat the Rich is very, very cool. Nice pre-chorus, great chorus. It's and you got some nice in the breakdown before the solo kicks in. We could say the musical bridge. We got these nice call. We have this nice call and response between these cool, funky bass lines and some wicked guitars. Excellent. Screaming in the Night. You can argue this is their best song. This is the song that stood the test of time for Krokus. You hear on Rock 107 to this day. Maybe you hear it on Classic Rewind on Sirius XM. Or maybe you hear it on Ozzy's Boneyard. 6 minutes, 38 seconds. I remember they put a video out for this on MTV. They significantly reduced the track listing, the time of it. But I remember we got the whole version of it on Rock 107. Screaming in the Night kicks ass. It has this great effect in the beginning where you have the guitar line and the wind in the background. This was produced by Tom Allum, and Tom did a wonderful job on here. He produced a lot of great albums for Judas Priest, and he also produced In Rock We Trust by Y&T. Screaming in the Night has that great opening with those very lyrical solos from Fernando before Mark's vocal kicks in. Mark's use of mid-range on here is excellent. Very, very cool. It brings you in. Great hooks on this with the guitar lines. Great chorus. Chorus is fantastic. Mark's screams on here, how long he's holding the notes is very, very impressive. Outstanding. Great guitar solo on here. The verses are great. It's just a great, memorable hard rock song. Mid-tempo hard rock song. Some people call it a ballad. I don't know if it's so much a ballad. There's nothing syrupy or sappy about this. This is just got a lot of grit to it, a lot of fire. It's got a lot of great hooks on it. It is a fantastic track. Ready to Burn. So next track, we got Rob Halford from Judas Priest, just mentioned before, on backing vocals. You can hear him clearly on the chorus. This is more of a wicked, fast-paced anthem, which is really, really cool. More raging in its execution. It's a great album side closer. We go into Night Wolf, which has a nice atmospheric intro with the guitars. You'll hear more of that in a little bit. This is more raging, more fast-paced. Lyrics are very, very controversial. This would never get on the radio these days, I'll tell you that. But great chorus. It's just a wicked kick-ass hard rocker. Stayed Awake All Night was the cover of the Bachman Turner Overdrive song from their self-titled debut. I didn't hear the Bachman Turner Overdrive version until many years later. I actually like this version a little more now. At one point, I would have went with the BTO version. I love BTO's music. I would probably put this over the BTO version for two reasons. One, it's tighter. Definitely tighter in the choruses and the call and response with Mark and the rest of the band in the vocals on it. The second reason I put this over the BTO version is Mark's vocal performance on here. They really make this song their own. They play it with a lot of gusto and passion. Very, very strong. The band played this live for many years. When they put out a greatest hits package, they called it Stayed Awake All Night, the best of Krokus. Interestingly, on their previous album, One Vice at a Time, they cover American Woman, another song that Randy Bachman wrote or had a hand in writing. And that version wasn't so hot. Here, they knock it out of the park. Strong version. Krokus would cover a song on 4 albums in a row. They would later cover Ballroom Blitz on the Blitz. They would cover Schools Out on Change of Address. Of those 4 cover songs I've just mentioned, none of them touched Stayed Awake All Night. Stand Up and Be Counted. This is the only song on here I don't think is very good or great. This is a good anthem. I wouldn't call it filler. I mean, they play with so much conviction, you really can't say it's filler, but it's a good song. It's got a nice chorus to it. Wiped In is 2 minutes and 10 seconds. It plays like a great intro. It's all studio effects and guitars. And it's very, very cool. I don't wouldn't count it so much as a song. I think it plays as a great intro to the closer and the killer that is Russian Winter. Russian Winter is raging. It's got that galloping beat. They play with so much fire on here. Mark sounds tremendous. The band are killing it on here. With that Run for Your Life chorus, it is just a wicked closer to a very strong 1980s hard rock or heavy metal album. This is Krokus with Headhunter. Now, how would I rank these? This I've had over 40 years with. This I've had 25. Let's go with Krokus first. To me, this is their best work. They went downhill in a big way with the Blitz. The Blitz was okay, but it didn't touch this, and Change of Address. Don't even get me started. They've made some good albums since then when they went back to a classic, more of a hard rock, classic rock album, rock sound, I should say. But this is their magnum opus. This is a very good album. I would give this a 9. This album, I adore. My first Herbie Hancock album from my favorite period of Herbie Hancock's music. I love the next album, Thrust, which had Mike Clark on drums. I like Man-Child, which came out the next year. I actually quite like Sexton, which was the album that came out before, which had some of this kind of sound on it. Not quite as funky, but certainly a lot of great work on it. One of my favorite Herbie Hancock albums, period, because I also love stuff from his 60s albums, which were more in the hard bop vein. This, I give a 10. So, Headhunters, 10. Headhunter, 9. Headhunters wins today's album war. So, thank you so much for joining me. What do you think of Herbie Hancock's music? What do you think of Krokus's music? Have you heard either or both of these albums, or do you own both of these albums? And what do you think of them? What are your favorite songs by Herbie Hancock? Do you only know the song Rocket from Future Shock, which had an awesome video, one of the early great MTV videos back in 1983? Do you think this is the best album by Krokus? Do you like some of their earlier work like Metal Rendezvous or One Vice at a Time more? Do you like the latter day albums more? Please let me know in the comments who you think wins today's album war. Thank you so much for joining me today. Do what you love, and I'll talk to you soon.